Well, not if you listen to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, just the other day at a closed session of the Knesset Foreign Affairs Committee, that's the parliament. He compared himself obliquely to David Ben-Gurion, one of the most distinguished of all Israeli prime ministers, when he said that yes, David Ben-Gurion was indeed a distinguished prime minister, but his failing was that he failed to stand up to the United States. Any Israeli prime minister, he said, should be able to do just that, by implication meaning that he, Benjamin Netanyahu, would not cave in to any sort of pressure from the United States. And make no mistake about it, he is under a lot of pressure from the United States at the moment to shift his position, to push the direction of the ground offensive in Gaza in a different direction, to put the emphasis on more accurate bombardment, less, as it's often been called, including by Joe Biden, the US president, indiscriminate bombardment of Gaza. So at this stage, the Israelis don't seem to be moving at all in the direction of the US. Although what happens publicly and what is said publicly is often different from what happens behind the scenes. And it may very well be the case that following the pressure from just over the last 24 hours from the US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and last week Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, that Israel may be coming to accept that it will have to shift its position in the next few weeks, perhaps the beginning of January, and start moving away from this full-on, very heavy bombardment of Gaza to something which is more sustainable, more focused on taking out Hamas commanders, and less indiscriminate bombardment of whole districts of Gaza.
Rob, of course, one of the big issues there in Israel are the 129 hostages who are still in Gaza. What's the latest on the hostage negotiations? Has there been any movement there?
Very little movement at all. I mean, it is true that at the moment the head of Mossad, Israel's spy agency, has been meeting in Warsaw with the head of the CIA and Qatari representatives to see whether it's possible to advance towards negotiations. In other words, negotiations about negotiations with Hamas on the release of the hostages. That at least is a step in the right direction, because after the last pause came to an end, there was no contact with Hamas whatsoever, no talk really of the possibility of the release of hostages. Now, Hamas was saying that either the Israelis would have to announce a complete sustainable ceasefire, otherwise it wasn't getting the hostages back alive. There does seem to be a glimmer of hope now that things can move again in the direction of some sort of pause perhaps in the hostilities, so that hostages can be exchanged again for Palestinian prisoners. But we're still not there yet. And in the meantime, the families here of the hostages becoming more and more desperate. We saw 3 hostages escaped from their captors in Gaza the other day. They were shot by Israeli troops, mistaking them for Hamas fighters. That has really shocked, I think, Israeli society. And then the release of a video by Hamas, which has not been shown in the Israeli media because it's banned, but it's available on social media, of 3 elderly hostages talking about their conditions. It puts a lot of pressure on the Israeli government.